All right. Today we're going to take a look at the Legacy of Cthulhu. This is a solo and or co-op Cthulhu game, and in this game it takes place after the great old ones have awakened and brought chaos and insanity to the world. Civilization has fallen, and you with a group have to survive the horrors and hardships of decayed land, and with a little bit of luck, find a way to bring hope to humankind. In this innovative RPG, you can face the madness of Cthulhu in 3 game modes: solo, co-op, and traditional group play. Of course, on my channel here, we're going to be talking about this sort of solo co-op mode, which, as we'll see, kind of in a way gets into the same thing in a sense, because even if you're playing solo as one character, along the way you are going to end up meeting and creating other characters, other survivors to travel with you. Of course, you yourself are still playing solo as an individual person, but conceptually, you will be, as you make your way through this pretty effectively designed sandbox Cthulhu game, you are going to be creating and managing some other characters. At least that is what happened to me in my gameplay, and I'm not sure how you would play it without that happening. And of course, you could actually play with friends without a GM. So, what is this game? Well, this game, as I mentioned, is a sandbox game. Now, I was sent this by the publisher. I was sent this book only by the publisher. And as we will see as I get into my discussion, there are some other game components that you may wish to obtain in order to play the game. They're not necessary, but I think they would add a lot to the game. I'm not going to show any gameplay here. I'm going to try to avoid too many spoilers by showing you too many details of the tables that are in the game, because this game, as we look at the credits here, is really run by those tables. The mechanics of gameplay are very light, and the tables are what is generating the story. One note is that this game is a translation here, and I believe it's a translation from Portuguese. I'm not 100% sure about that, but it is a translation, and I mention that as a note because if you look at the table of contents here, you will see that there are, well, actually, I don't know if it's in the table of contents, but somewhere there are referenced a bunch of scenarios in the game. And in fact, toward the back of the book is a big section describing or labeled scenarios. So, for example, in this section on cities, they say cities are pre-made scenarios based on famous locations, real or not, featuring unique backstories, important characteristics, and special rules. Indeed, they are. However, what they are lacking, when I think of the word scenario, especially in the context of RPG, is a specific goal or a specific mission attached to that scenario, that's what makes it a scenario. Now, maybe that's a misinterpretation on my part, but I want to say this up front, that these cities are here. They are not goal oriented. There is not a mission with them. They present more of a setting than a scenario. And you could see here the Miskatonic Six. You get some NPCs made for you. There are maps. We'll get into talking about what that actually means. And they are, if you're familiar with Lovecraft, you are recognizing the names of these cities. They're, as I said, they are described as scenarios, but I think they're really just settings. So the game itself does not come with any predetermined or pre-made scenarios or goals or specific missions, at least as far as I was able to figure out. And as such, it really is a sandbox world that you are traveling through. It is a world that has already been destroyed. And you get at the outset a story, a backstory of what is going on in the world, and then some instructions about how to play what you need to play. The And then you get the world setting here. And I'm not going to get into details about that, but the bottom line is you are a survivor in this world. As such, you have some statistics here. You have body, presence, and mind, and then you have some derived statistics from those, your HP, your stance, which is a description of how you are going to interact in social situations, and your willpower, which is the amount of damage that your character can take and overcome hardships and survive. And then you choose a bunch of skills, and the skills and the stats are going to work together in order to bring the mechanic, the die rolling mechanic of the game. You're going to be rolling, it's a D10 based game. So every roll in the game is a D10 or 2D10. And you will be rolling your D10 and adding a relevant stat if you have one, and adding adding a relevant skill if you have one, and you get 2 points for skill, plus whatever stat you're using, to your roll. And if you achieve a 10 or greater, you have a success. If you are less than 10, you have a failure. The weapons and items are all based off of your stats. So the type of weapon, the damage that it is doing is based on your body stat plus a number. And you can see that is true for the exotic weapons as well. And armor is going to reduce incoming damage. There are equipment and resources that you can have. And there is also a random item table that you can use to equip yourself or roll on when the game calls for it. And there are also spells. And the way spells work is that you have a cost to cast the spell, and the cost is in willpower. So your willpower is going to go down as you cast the spell. There is a recovery, a rest mechanism in the game, and we'll talk about that a bit later, so you can recover your willpower, but you are, by definition, not able to cast infinite spells before you rest because you have this cost to it. The cost could also be with insanity or hunger, and those are additionally things in the game that can get you, very familiar to those of you who know something about this kind of world. In the game, you are survivors, as mentioned. You begin with a shelter, or at least the game tells you to begin with a shelter, and you create that shelter based on, you have values for that shelter based on the type of tile it is in. You're traveling on map tiles, and the basic ones are wreckage, underground, ruins, coast, and wasteland. And they all have impacts to what type of shelter you have. And then during the course of the game, you will be able to do shelter upgrades if you so choose, by spending time to make these upgrades, and by spending a cost of space, so you don't have infinite space in your shelter, but that is an action that you can take. So I mentioned the check system already in terms of the getting to the value of the 10 with your D10 roll. You can roll with advantage and disadvantage, either taking the higher or the lower value of your 2d10 roll if relevant. And combat basically works the same way. It's very player focused. So you're making your rolls, you're seeing whether or not you are successful, and in certain cases, certain enemies have a reaction to you if you fail, and the reaction has an impact on your HP. The game is one where you need to manage the time that you spend. And the reason for this is that at the end of every day, it says you begin each day at 6 a.m., but at the end of every day, you need to roll for wandering hordes of enemies. And if wandering hordes of enemies are around and you are not back at your shelter, you could be in big trouble. Even if you are at your shelter, you can get attacked, but your shelter offers protection. But if you're out in the world and it's the end of the day and you're dealing with a lot of hordes, you can die very easily. Additionally, if you're not back at your shelter, you can't use the recovery action that shelters offer to gain back some of your things that you have lost during the course of the day. You also do need to eat every day, and there is a mechanism for finding food and searching for food. So there is the management of time and the looking to see how much time takes to do certain things. So to find a random item, it takes an hour. If you're looking for a specific item, then the time is going to vary based on the item itself. And it refers you to the various number tables to see what that means. So for example, we're going to turn to some of these tables here to show you how that works. So for example, here is an equipment found table. If you're finding clothes or winter clothes, it would take you an hour. But if you end up finding a walkie-talkie, it would spend 4 hours. A first aid kit is going to take 6 hours to find. So to find something, you are going to do a mind investigation check, meaning you will roll with the value added of your mind value, whatever that may be. Say it's 4. And if you have investigation as a skill, you can add 2. You need to get to a 10. If you're successful, you can then go and get the thing that you want. And you need to spend the amount of time that it takes to do that. This could include, for example, finding other survivors, and the time it takes is going to depend on the sort of tile that you are on. So this is a game where you are either playing on a predetermined map, as we saw back here, or you are creating your own map. Now, when I mentioned at the outset of the video, I was sent this book by the designers, and just this book. I have later realized that there are things that you can print out to make these tiles, but I didn't have that. And so what I did was I created my own hex map here, and I made a D10 table of possible tiles. And what I did to do that, you see there aren't 10 tiles here, but there are special tiles that come up in the various cities. And they have their own tables associated with them. I just added them into my D10 here. So basically, in my story, I was traveling through, and as I traveled, I rolled to see what type of tile I would find. And I included in that not just the basic terrain tiles, but the specific tiles from the various cities, like farm, military base, hospital, prison, or shopping mall, with a little frowny face because it's never good to get into a shopping mall in a game like this. So in my story, because there wasn't a set thing I needed to do, I wasn't really sure how to start. And I did start the game. The first game I played, I started as per the rules. I built a shelter. I was in a shelter, and I just decided to go walking. The first thing I encountered, I didn't take their suggestion and run away. I tried to encounter it, and then I died. So there is a mechanism and an instruction even in the rules that you may wish to run away from a fight, and I would caution you to listen to that. I didn't, and I had to start all over. I didn't like the way I started in the shelter. It didn't feel exciting enough. So I just went to a random table here and I rolled on it, and it had something to do with a prison and encountering someone in a prison. So I decided for the story that I actually ended up playing, I was escaping from a prison, and this was just some other thing I had. So this was my prison, and I escaped from the prison. I ran away from the thing that was chasing me. And then for my first exit into the world, I did a random direction as well as a random tile. There is an oracle system in here, and it gives you there is a short table that gives you directions to go on. And thematically for me, I decided since I was in this prison, I was a little bit not totally sure where I was. And that's why I just exited and kind of randomly started running. Then my story was that I had to get back to my own shelter. So I had, from the previous game where I died, I had determined this was where my shelter was in a wreckage tile. And so I ran out of the prison and had to go in this direction. Using the oracles here in the game, they are provided for things like answering a yes or a no, for direction, as mentioned, to the left or down, and whether something is closed or broken or open or working. And there are some other oracles here to provide, like, enemies, who they are, what they might want, and whether they are like what they are in the world. Are they you? Are they describing your tile? Is it a spell? And then what is it going to do? There's also events that you can roll on based on the tile. So if you're in the ruins, you could find a dark alley or a freight yard. But if you're on the coast, you might find a ship or a beach. And then there are events, combat threats that you can roll up here. So if you're looking for just a general encounter with an enemy, and there are lists of enemies in the book. And then there are events that are challenges. So for example, something set the area on fire, or there's a barrier blocking your way. So that is and then there's a character and a characteristics table, like an NPC kind of situation. But the bulk of the book, the bulk of the gameplay is very much simpler than that. You do not really need to use those interpretive tables very much if you don't want to. You are going to decide on your action. You're going to roll an event on the table of the specified tile, and then that's the gameplay loop. If you stay on the tile, you roll the d10 again, and if you get a 1 or a 2, you have a violent encounter. If not, you just go back and repeat and decide what you want to do. And here are the list of examples of things that you can do, including travel, searching, and hunting for food, interacting with characters, looking for a new shelter, for example. And then the bulk of the book, and this is where I'm not going to show you too much about it, are these tables that list things that will happen at various tiles. And these are the scenario special tiles, as I mentioned. But in my game, I just kind of incorporated it all together because I wasn't playing in one of those cities and on one of those predetermined maps. There's wasteland tiles. So each of these are essentially D20 tables that you roll on by rolling 2d10, and there's the top of the table and the bottom of the table. And this is how the game is conducted, and this is how you build your story from that game. So in the case of my character did find this, initially bumped into somebody else, and I created who that person was using the tables, and then the two of them together were making their way down to my character's shelter, and that was like as far as I got during the course of one day. And so it was at the end, it became almost like a push your luck situation to see, was I going to be able to get to the shelter to give myself the 8 hours of rest to recover some of the stats that I was using up, versus taking more time but not having the ability to rest and recover. So this game very much has the feel of a board game, and it's like you're taking these 2d10s and rolling them essentially to figure out what to do on the map of the game that you are creating. And I think I have had difficulty finding a rules light solo Cthulhu game to play. The only other one that I have successfully found to play is the Four Against the Great Old Ones, which I was actually pretty disappointed in, and it was too programmatic, and I think that, and I was disappointed in this. So I think that the open-ended nature of this game, the sandbox nature of it, is successful and does give you that feeling of like you're not sure what's going to happen, and you have that feeling of exploration, and there are dangerous things out there. And I don't think I showed before the enemy stats. It's very is simple, and the main thing is the strike reaction that they have against you, so you can again accomplish all of these things so easily with, in terms of your actual mechanics. You're just rolling the 1d10 and then you're adding your relevant stat, and you know what that is because it is right there for you in the game. So very easy to get into. There are, of course, the great old ones themselves and their hordes, and they're a little bit more complicated in terms of what they do and how they respond to you. I just want to finally take a look at the back here of I didn't use this character sheet, but this is the character sheet and the shelter sheet. I think what is really missing in this game is a way to track your time. I mean, I made my own way, but time is so significant in this game. It should be somewhere on a character sheet or a shelter sheet or something like that, because it's a value that is very precious and important to the way the game actually works. So that was missing. The other thing I wish that it had was just the way they do the D10 tables, which is effectively like a D20 table using the two D10s, to have a list of people that you could encounter with their stats, so that when I found somebody, I needed to go back and basically build that character. Now, making the character is pretty quick, but that did take me out of the game a little bit. I didn't like that, and there wasn't really a way to randomize it so much. So it's like, well, maybe you're going to build the type of character you need, as opposed to just some random table character, and then you have to figure out how to interact with that. So those were two things that I found lacking. I think they could be pretty easily fixed or added. And then again, the point that I just did not know when I was sent this, that there was the ability to get pre-made or a printout or something. I think it's a cutout of these actual tiles, because as I said, it feels like I've got this is the map from This War of Mine. This is very much the feeling of the game, that you're in this shelter and you're in a world and you're alone there. But in fact, the tables work by knowing what actual tile you are on, and that is something I think it would just add a lot to the immersion if I had actually had those tiles. I wasn't going to obviously cut something out of this book here. I wasn't going to, or it couldn't play on this map because I needed to refer to the book itself. So at one point I thought, well, I'll put a little token here, but that wasn't going to work. So in any case, that's a look at the Legacy of Cthulhu. I think it's very successful as a rules-light solo Cthulhu game. If there are other games in this space that fit that criteria, please let me know. As I said, I have the 4 Against the Great Old Ones, don't love it. There is a scenario for Call of Cthulhu RPG that there's at least one that I have that's kind of like a choose your own adventure kind of thing. I'm not a fan of that format, as you know, if you watch this channel. So that's kind of one and done. But I think this really does, I haven't heard a lot about this game for whatever reason, but I think it really fills a space for the solo gamer who wants to be in that world. The other thing you could do, which I did not do, is I think you could bring in very easily to this if you had like post-apocalyptic horror type of random tables to fill in some of the details. You'll be doing a lot of that here when you get on the tables. And I think there's definitely enough in here that you don't need that. But if you're somebody that wants even more detail than would be offered in these tables, it would be very open to, like I said, post-apocalyptic type tables, horror, obviously, tables, and, dressing, as it were, that this game would absorb that very nicely. So that's a look inside the Legacy of Cthulhu. It is easy to get into story development game that feels very much like a board game in a lot of ways, where you are traveling around something that is being created as you roll on the tables and having unique interactions along the way.